Windows Server 2022. Welcome back everybody. I'm Prakash Pradhan, your trainer for this entire series. In today's topic, we are going to talk about a remote desktop. That's a most commonly used your service for the operating system actually in order to overcome some of the issues or solving the problem. But what we need to understand that when we enable a remote desktop actually, so by default it allows to every IP address whoever knocks your remote desktop actually. So now I'm going to show you in this video that how to block to the particular range of IPs from the remote desktop access so that unauthorized range of IP will not be able to access your remote desktop so that your administration is done more securely. Now first of all, I would like to take you to the server, okay, because we need to understand the scenario as well. Okay, now currently the IP address of my domain, it's not mandatory that it has to be domain, okay, it can be anything. So let's see, my IP address of the server is 200.200. So one of my client operating system as a member over here is a Windows 10. Now if I have to show you the IP address of that computer, so let's see, that is 200.2. So currently if I try to communicate with the server, okay, that is the server operating system server 2022, so it's going to reply easily because no rules are applied so far in terms of the firewall. Now I want this computer to be able to access remotely to my server operating system. So if you can see over here, remote desktop is disabled. So I'm going to enable first. Okay, so I'm going to enable, apply, okay, done. Now if I go to my client operating system and here I'm going to enable or try to access over the remote desktop. Now it should ask me to the authentication, and after passing through the authentication I'm going to be able to take over the remote desktop session. So this is the IP address I've already seen. Okay, now if I connect, see, that means my remote session is done. So let's see practically also. Okay, now successfully I should be able to connect to my server because the remote desktop is enabled. And don't forget, we have not set any kind of firewall rule in the server, so that's why any of the computer, okay, any client operating system, whoever comes, okay, in order to access your remote desktop to the server, that will not be denied, so that will be accessed easily. So it's trying to secure the connection. So by the time if I show you my server, it is functioning properly because it is not taken over by the client via remote desktop. Now if I go to client, see, yes, now your remote desktop session is started. That means now successfully you will be able to manage or monitor your server via your client operating system because your remote desktop service was turned on. Now your connection is done. If I take you to the server over here, connection is done. See, that means your server remote is turned off because at a time only one computer will be able to access your remote desktop because we are not going to use any remote desktop license. See, my operating system is actually Windows 10. Now I have taken the console of my server 2022. This is done. Now I am going to show you now how to create the inbound rule. Okay, how to set the inbound rule in a server so that your server is quite secure. Otherwise, you have already seen that when you turn on your remote desktop session over here in the server or any operating system, any client using any range of IP will be allowed to take over your computer remotely. And I do believe you understand that that's not a secure practice. That's not a good practice. Now, there are many ways to go to the remote desktop. You're creating firewall policy. Number one is your firewall.cpl. This is shortcut. If I take you to the firewall.cpl, is going to take you over here. And when we talk about creating firewall rules, okay, you need to make sure that you go to the advanced setting actually. We come to the advanced setting and we find two rules over here. Inbound rule and outbound rule. Inbound rules in a firewall means it will create a policy or it will check or go through all the ports that's been open or that's been allowed from the any source computer to come inside your network. That's why it's saying the inbound rule. That means my computer right now is a server 2022 and its IP address is 200.200. So if I create the inbound rule to take over remotely to my this server, okay, so I need to specify any particular range of IP to whom you would like to allow to come inside this server. So that's why that's an inbound rule. So that allows outsider to come inside your network. Whereas I do have another one option, that's the outbound rule. So I do believe that you already understood by the word itself. So inbound rule means that creates a policy or the rule that allows the outsider to come inside your network. Now outbound rule means that allows your internal client to go outside via this policy. Okay, that will open the door for you to go outside also. Now apart from this, you need to understand one more thing. Whenever you create any firewall inbound rule, okay, your firewall should be on. That means defender should be on. Example, this, see, this one I was talking about, this should be turned on, all should be turned on. Otherwise, making a firewall policy will be all in vain to you. Okay, now we are going to create one firewall policy so that right now we saw that 192.168.200.2 was able to take over remotely your server. Now I'm going to create one policy that will block that particular IP address. Okay, in order to do that, go to the inbound rule. You can create from the right hand side also, or you can do from here also. Okay, so right click and new rule. So it's better to go for the custom option. Okay, of course we do have options for program port predefined, but the best option is a custom, since we are talking about the lab environment implementation. So I found it quite fruitful. So let's go to the all program, but here we are going to be specific. That means I would like to block TCP port number. Okay, not all the port number, only specific 3389. That means remote desktop. What you would like to do over here? Block. To whom? That means what is the local source IP address actually? To my server itself. Okay, so 192.168.200.200. This is my IP address. Which local IP address does this rule apply to? Apply to this IP address. And second one is the remote IP address, to whom this rule you want to be allowed. Okay, allow or deny. So I would like to give my last times client IP address. This is my last times client IP address. That means Windows 10. Now next, what would you like that computer to have? Previously we have already seen that taking over your server using a remote desktop. Now I'd like to create one policy so that remote desktop is disabled. So I'm going to click block. Next, domain private public. All this rule applies to all. Okay, so next, now let's say deny remote to client having IP 192.168.200.2. If you go back and check it one more time, see here 202. What do you want to do this 202? Block. Previously you have seen yourself that we were able to set the remote desktop. And when you create any inbound rule, you make it sure that it's on top. Okay, so that it gets effect. Now since the firewall policy is already set, now let's go to the client operating system and try to have access over your server remotely. And this should not allow, because we have blocked this IP address, because the IP address of this client is 200.2 and to whom we have set the block. It will not allow you to have a remote desktop session. If it does, that means our policy didn't work. Trust me guys, it is blocked. 100% it is blocked. Now it will try to initiate this remote desktop session, and afterwards it will go through the rule that's in the, inbound rule. See, it is not allowed. That means our work is done successfully. So what about if I go to my server and disable that rule? I have disabled this rule. Go to the client, again try to connect. It is done. Why? Policy is block. That means disable. Again I enable this policy. Okay, enable it and try to access via remote again. Okay, so let's see now what's gonna happen. So again it will not allow you to have remote access. Successfully it worked. It shouldn't allow. Wait for a few seconds. I want you to see practically. Okay, it will be easy for you also, that you'll be convinced that what we do, it worked. So that means remote desktop is one of the most important feature actually that's been given by the Microsoft in order to troubleshoot your server. Actually, it's not only the server, for the other client operating system as well, but you need to make sure how to set the rules from the firewall that allows to create inbound and outbound rule. Okay, so I do believe it was easy for you and you understood this. There was no error. I do believe it will be fruitful to you in order to implement in your server environment. So thank you and hope you like it, and do subscribe. Thank you.